My dear brothers and sisters, today we remember and we commemorate the great missionaries, French missionaries who had gone to Canada in the 17th century, John de Brebeuf and his companions. 8 of them, as young Jesuit missionaries, they left their homeland, France, and they took the journey to go to Canada to evangelize, to be with them and to evangelize and to spread the good news and also to share their experiences of God, their experiences of Christ to the native Red Indians. It was not an ordinary, it was not an easy missionary expedition. It was perhaps one of the very, very challenging, a very, very demanding missionary expedition which ended in martyrdom. When they had reached there, they began the process of getting to know the native Indians. They acclimatized themselves and accommodated themselves with the eating habits as well as the cultural activities of the native Indians. And then they began to share about Christ. They began to share about the good news to the people, hoping and praying that they would be able to convert a few of them to Christianity. They would be able to bring a few of them to believe in Christ and his ministry. In spite of consistent effort for many years, no one was converted. But time and again, the Red Indians would come and ask the missionaries, because they would often talk about heaven and the joys, the peace, and the happy experiences in heaven. So one day, a group of Red Indians had come to the missionaries and asked them, "Will there be war in heaven?" And the missionaries said, "Surely there will be no war in heaven." And to that they said, "If there is no war in heaven, how can there be happiness?" Then they asked, "Will there be horse riding in heaven?" To that too they said, "There will be no horse riding in heaven." And again the Red Indians responded, "If there is neither war nor horse riding in heaven, how can it be a place of happiness?" And a few years later, there was a natural calamity, and many of their possessions and houses were damaged. And the Red Indians felt that the presence of these missionaries were the cause for the destruction. And they were very, very cruelly and very, very brutally, they were put to death. And today, when we look back at the life of John de Brebeuf and his companions, we are often reminded when we ask the question, were they successful missionaries? And surely the success of missionary life does not depend upon how many people they had converted, how many people began to believe in Christ, but the success depends upon how much fidelity they had experienced, whether they had lived an exemplary life, whether they had lived a life of faithfulness to Christ and to the gospel. And surely John de Brebeuf and his companions lived a life of fidelity to Christ and to the gospel. And that is precisely why they have been canonized as saints. And when we remember, let us pray to God that we too may have the grace and the courage to stand before people and fearlessly and courageously share about Christ and to share about the good news to other people.